Kay was a speaker at the TED 2011 conference, The Rediscovery of Wonder in California, and a speaker at the 2011 Cannes Lions Creativity Festival in France.
On the CNN online homepage, on YouTube homepage, and was a featured poet on the 6th season of Russell Simmons Presents HBO Deaf Poetry Jam.
Raised by an unruly family of poets at the Bowery Poetry Club, a member of the NYC Urbana Poetry Slam team, and the youngest poet competing at the National Poetry Slam in 2006.
A featured performer at events and venues like the Tribeca Film Festival, Lincoln Center Out of Doors in the United Nations. An international performer in the UK, Czech Republic, France, South Africa, and India.
Published in Foundling Review, Damselfly Press, Decomp, Literary Bohemian, Père Noir, and various international education programs like Alenia's 6th to 9th grade English textbooks in Denmark, Pearson's additional English media for 9th grade English in Ontario, Canada, and the BBNM Group's Crowd Input Project, created by students at Yale University, Stockholm School of Economics, Oxford University, and Parsons.
Sarah Kay is a New Yorker, a poetry writer and reader, a spoken word poetry teacher, the founder and co-director of Project Voice with Bill Kay, a witty banter enthusiast, a postcard lover, a documentary filmmaker.
A foodie, a playwright, a singer, a songwriter, a photographer, a best-selling author of the book Beat, an editor for Write Bloody Publishing, a Gemini, a mediocre driver at best.
A musical theater geek, a smoothie expert, the daughter of a Taoist mother and a Brooklynese father.
A Hapa, less cool than her little brother, an alum of the United Nations International School.
An alum of Brown University, currently pursuing her master's degree in the art of teaching secondary English with the Brown University Graduate School.
Good morning. Over the past year, we've been talking a lot about how words might destroy, and today is a day that we're going to celebrate how words build, how words rejuvenate, how words create, and copying my twin, as I call her all the time. Take care of one another with words, be gentle, be kind, make sure the people that you love know that you love them, that you care about them, and use your voice for the young girls, find it, nurture it, make it strong, and for the upperclassmen, know it, use it, and change your life. So we're going to, for the next two speakers, or the next two students, we're going to hear Imani Francis and Joanne De Jesus, and they're going to share poems that either resonate with them, that they found from another author, or that they've written themselves. And then the next voice we're going to hear is our beloved and honorable keynote speaker, Sarah Kay. So enjoy.
This is a poem by Sandra Maria Esteves. Being Puertorriqueña Dominicana, born in the Bronx, not really jíbara, not really hablando bien, but yet not gringa either, pero ni portorra, pero sí portorra too, pero ni que, what am I? Y que soy, pero con what voice do my lips move? Rhythms of prosa, wood feet dancing bomba, not even here, but here, y conga, y somos y como somos. Pero eso sí es algo lindo, algo muy lindo. We defy translation, ni tengo nombre, nameless, we are a whole culture once removed. Lolita alive for 25 years, ni soy, pero soy puertorriqueña como ella. Giving blood to the independent star, daily transfusions into the river of La Sangre Viva.
This is a poem that I wrote in creative writing last year. It's called Dreaming. It's just me, myself, and I in this world of masks and lies, contemplating the end of the universe. Not just the world, because I can dream bigger and better than you can. Look into the eyes of a baby wish and tell them that when you grow up, you're going to make dreams come true. The dreams of the old and the new, of those who deserved it and those who didn't. But you're going to make a difference in this world of misuses and abuses, temptations and mistakes. Mistakes that can't be fixed, only change negatively. Because people can't live up to the consequences of their actions, only push them aside onto someone else. but you will be there for them. When they decide that they want to fix it, open your arms and comfort them. While really, you're just comforting yourself. Because you can't stand to see the world disintegrate into something much less than what it really is. But we will pick up the pieces together, and yet alone. Because it really is just me, myself, and I picking up after our masks and lies. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. That was so exciting. First of all, that was like the nicest introduction I think I've ever gotten. It is also a lesson, though, to always keep your bio up to date, right? Because that would have been really embarrassing if they got up here and they're like, Sarah Kay is the best 5th grader in Miss Anderson's class. Could have happened. So good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Kay, and I'm from New York City. I grew up in New York. All right, yeah. And I am a city girl to my core. The first time my parents took me outside of New York City to visit my uncle in New Jersey, I was standing on the front step of his lovely suburban home when a fast-moving shadow caused my 3-year-old heart to damn near beat out my chest, and I shouted, "That's the biggest rat I've ever seen." My uncle calmly responded, "Sweetie, that's a cat." To which I shot back, "Oh yeah? Well, what's it doing outside then?" My parents realized there are some things you just couldn't learn in New York City. So every summer, we migrated out to Montauk, Long Island, the easternmost point of New York State. My father only got 2 weeks off from work a year, so whenever August rolled around, we packed everything we could into the company van and followed that yellow spotted line of highway out until we couldn't go any farther. This is where I learned to swim, where I heard the word shit for the first time from a bunch of surfers down by the beach, how to ride a bike on rainy afternoons swerving around puddles, how to drive a car in the hardware store parking lot, how to kiss a boy with sand between my toes. Time goes to Montauk to take a break. It loosens its belt, takes a seat on the front porch next to my father and his Weber grill. It putters around the kitchen while my mother is kneading the dough of her homemade sourdough bread and chuckles when it catches her speaking out loud to herself, telling no one in particular that we should roast peaches tonight. I bet oatmeal would be delicious tomorrow morning if we roasted some peaches tonight. Time stalls in Montauk. I'm 7 years old. My little brother is 3. He splashes in the baby pool while I brave the full-length Olympic-sized one by myself. Chubby in my one piece, my thighs brush against each other as I tread water in the shallow end. I look up to see an older girl, perfect in her bikini, tall and tan, and probably on her way to meet her handsome Prince Charming boyfriend. She glows as she glides past me, tosses her hair like she has all the answers, and I wonder if I'll ever be a woman like that. That summer, I learned how to wish on stars. I'm 12 years old. My little brother is 8. He can surf better than I can, and I hate it. I wait until he and all the other surfers are done for the day before paddling my fat sponge of a board out past the breakers. There is no one left in the water. The setting sun makes the ocean glow golden. I tuck my legs up. That summer, I learn how to be alone. I am 16. My little brother is 12 and at the beach. I am reading magazines on the couch when my mother appears in the living room holding her laptop, the only computer we have in the house. My little brother has downloaded his first porn video to the desktop, and she is trying to figure out what should be done about it. That night at dinner, there is no mention of it at the dining room table. But later, when I go to check my email, I discover she has made a new folder on the desktop, labeled it PK's Porn, and left it there for him to find. That summer, I learned how to love my parents. There are some things you cannot learn in New York City. There are some places where fishnets do not mean stockings, where the learning happens in between moments, like after a wave passes and you break the surface, gasping for air. I am 23. The landmarks are the same stretch of beach, same hardware store parking lot. Some of the names have changed, the pool hasn't. I make my way to the shallow end and wade in slow. In Montauk, I can take my time. I look up to see a little girl, chubby, in her one piece, clutching the wall and watching me enter the water, her eyes as big as summer tomatoes and just as red from all the chlorine rubbing. I almost speak to her. But before I can, there is a splash behind me. A woman, well into her 50s, chubby, in her one piece, has cannonballed into the deep end. She comes up coughing and flailing, water in her nose. She comes up laughing. The little girl giggles, and me, well, I am laughing too. That story about the porn folder is a true story. And for years, so the folder was there, I saw it, I thought it was hysterical, and then it disappeared like the next day. And my brother never mentioned it. And so I assumed that my mother had just realized that this is probably going to be incredibly emotionally scarring and had deleted it before he ever got a chance to see it. And years went by. And then last year, I was visiting my brother at college. It was his parents' weekend, and so I decided to go with my parents to see him because I miss him when I'm on tour. And we go and we're having this lovely dinner. Everything's going fine, and all of a sudden he starts giggling, and he goes, "Sarah, you know what my favorite story is about you?" And he proceeds to tell just the most wildly embarrassing story I have ever. I had no memory of this happening, and he's telling this horribly embarrassing story, and I was horrified. And so in retaliation, I was like, "Oh yeah? Well, you know what my favorite story is about you?" And I proceed to tell this story about the porn folder. And his response is, "Yeah, I know." And I was so defeated. And my mother, who had been sitting there listening to us banter back and forth for the past 10 minutes and had not said anything, had been very quiet listening to us, at this point decides to lean forward and go, "You know, it wasn't even very interesting porn." Yeah. Mom, 1, kids, 0. So I wrote this for my little brother. Little brother, you jaywalked your way out of the womb. I would recognize you anywhere by the hiccup in your swagger. Tell me, where in the world did you find all that thunder? There have never been any seatbelts on your side of the car. You have always known the better magic tricks. You told me once that I was just the first draft, and I'm inclined to believe you, but you came with a lot more pieces to assemble, and Mom and Dad, they never got the manual. Your compass always points north, but it's a bit of a crapshoot as to whether or not you'll ever really walk in that direction, and I like that. It keeps people on their toes. On the merry-go-round of your life, the carousel ponies are all narwhals. Their horns point straight up. The day they build you a constellation, it will be the entire F-train spread across the Milky Way. You will be a satellite who dips in and out of every single car the instant the train comes to a stop, pissing off everybody on the subway platform and kicking up stardust in your wake. You can solve a Law and Order before the first commercial break. Once, when you were 7, you came into the kitchen and asked Mom, "Does my name begin with the letter P because P is the 16th letter of the alphabet and I was born on June 16th? And is Sarah just Sarah because S is the 19th letter and she was born on the 19th day of June?" And when Mom said no, you nodded your head and left the kitchen mumbling to yourself, "Okay, just salt and pepper then." You are my favorite stick of dynamite. You are the opposite of a rubber band. There are so many things I would tell you if I thought that you would listen, and so many more you'd tell me if you believed I would understand. I hope you know you were never meant to wear this shadow. In fact, I'm the one who always steals your shoes, but is that my sweatshirt you're wearing? It's okay. You can keep it. I won't Tell your secret. In fact, it really does look better on you. For some reason with this dress, my bra straps keep sliding down. And I would normally be really super self-conscious about that, but this is like the only time I've ever performed in an all-girls school. It's awesome! I was also really half asleep this morning, and I was standing out there as people were arriving, and I was like, man, all the boys are late. Nope. No. Or they're just really late. So I got to take a trip to India, and it was probably the most important trip of my life. It flipped my entire world upside down. And I came home, and people kept asking, oh, how was India? What have you been up to? What's going on? And I had so much that had happened to me that I wanted to try to express, and it would just come out in this word vomit, and people were very overwhelmed. And I realized that I think this happens a lot. I think not necessarily that everyone goes to India, but that something happens or you have some sort of experience, and it's so incredible and changes your life so much that when someone casually says, hey, what's up, you have this urge to try to share all of it with them at one time. It's really difficult. So I wrote this poem as an answer to the question, what have you been up to lately? Lately, I've been living with spiders. But as roommates go, they haven't been so bad. The one in the bathroom keeps to his side of the tile, and the one in the bedroom, well, he can get a little bit grabby, but for the most part, he keeps his hands to himself. I guess all those hairsprays and car engines finally caught up with us because the pollution here is so bad. The sky glows orange from 5 p.m. through night till morning. Some people think it's disgusting that you can wash off what you thought was a tan. But me, I can't help but fall in love with a city that has 15 hours of twilight. If I ever have a grunge rock band, I will name it Beautiful Pollution. Outside the city, the dark is so dark, it is easy to forget which day is Tuesday, but the night there were dry lightning storms, it was like strobe lights through my window. I went outside and stood with my face up, smiling. I thought God was taking photographs. And even though I felt kind of silly standing there in my underwear, I figured I needn't be embarrassed. He's seen me and a whole lot less. Some nights, I wake up with a black hole in my chest. It echoes like a beatboxing hurricane and burns like a grandmother's memory. I tried Pepsid AC. It didn't help. I gave a haircut with big sloppy scissors and even made it look sort of nice. Everyone knew it was just a courtesy cut anyway. It probably wouldn't do much for the lice or the bed bugs. I've been looking for my favorite constellations everywhere, but I haven't seen any sign of them yet. The spaces between stars are so different here, much wider. I have always relied on the English of others, and in this rickshaw named Desire, it's no exception. On a cement rooftop somewhere off the highway, it is creeping its way towards night when 19-year-old Ravi begs me to write a love letter for him. It is for Neha, the girl he is in love with. She speaks English. He does not. So he cannot explain to me that this is forbidden, that he is already set to marry whomever his parents choose, but certainly someone within the village, and certainly someone within the caste, and certainly not this someone wrapped in yellow silk who smiles up at me from the photograph he shows me. I write it for him anyway. It has something about the moon, some stars in the sky, the way her eyes sparkle, and how he wishes they could be together always. When I finish the letter, Ravi takes it from my hands and reads the entire thing out loud. He doesn't understand a single word, but reads diligently and slowly, looking up at me every so often to make sure he is pronouncing the words correctly. When I hear what I have written out loud, the words hang in the air between us like bad breath, and I wish that I could take it back and write it over. I would write, Dear Neha, be careful about rooftops. Not about how high they are, but about how quickly your heart beats the faster you climb. Ravi's hands are good for climbing. I like the way he stands behind his mother while she's working. Not so much to insist on helping her, but just to let her feel his presence in case she needs him to reach for something on a top shelf. I like that he believes in love letters. His pants are a few inches too short. Have you ever come to visit him here? Probably not. The peacocks are enormous. They sound like cats. No one seems to pay them very much mind, but the males dance across all the rooftops in the village, begging for someone to notice their tails. Good luck with your secret, Sarah. When Ravi reaches the end of his letter, he reads the words, "I love you." These are words he understands. He smiles an enormous smile and bows his head. On the way back to the car, the translator tells me that Ravi wishes to say thank you. I tell him to tell Ravi good luck, and he does so. Ravi places both hands through the car window onto my own and says, "Dhanyavad," thanking me for the love letter over and over, "Bahut, bahut dhanyavad." He will never marry her, the translator tells me, when we have been driving in the dark for a few minutes. Yes, I say, but he can love her. It is monsoon season, and I watch as tall street corners become riverbanks and potholes become death traps. Not even the rickshaws are safe. The cobra I met in the orchard behind the lantern shed was much smaller than I'd imagined, but the mangoes were just as sweet. That's probably why when we cut one open, a spider crawled its way out. He had made his home inside. Lessons of being a woman. You can use your boots for pockets. Fun fact. So, how many people in this room, well, let's do it this way. If you are currently in love, on the count of 3, make some noise. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ooh, wow, that's a lot of people. All right, Miss Porters. Yeah. So, I usually like to use that as a litmus test of who's in the room with me. And usually less about haters and lovers and more about the age group. Because I perform for a lot of different age groups, and sometimes when I'm performing for like college age students and I say, "If you're in love, make some noise," usually the response is like, "Wow, love, yeah!" Like it's like their favorite sports team or something. And if I'm ever in a middle school audience and I say, "If you're in love, make some noise," the response is usually more like, "Ew." And then when I'm in a high school audience, usually what happens is I say, "If you're in love, make some noise," and there's like 2 people that go, "Woo," and everyone else goes, "Asshole." I know. I was there. So the first time I fell in love, I was 14 years old. And this is a poem about that. The first love of my life never saw me naked. There was always a parent coming home in a half hour. Always a little brother in the next room. Always too much body and not enough time for me to show him. Instead, I lent him my corners, my edges, the parts of me I could afford to offer, the parts I had long since given up trying to hide. I gave him my shoulder, my elbow, the bend of my knee. He never asked for more. He gave me back his eyelashes, the back of his neck, his palms. We held each piece we were given like it was a nectarine, might bruise if we weren't careful. We collected them like we were trying to build an orchard. And the spaces he never saw, the ones my parents had labeled private parts when I was still small enough to fit all of myself and worries inside a bathtub, I made up for them by handing over all the private parts of me. There was no secret I didn't tell him. There was no moment we didn't share. We didn't grow up, we grew in. Like ivy, wrapping, molding each other into perfect yings and yangs. We kissed with mouths open, breathing his exhale into my inhale and back. We could have survived underwater or outer space, living only off the breath we traded. We spelled love, G-I-V-E. I never wanted to hide my body from him. If I could have, I probably would have given it all away with the rest of me. I did not know it was possible to save some things for myself. Some nights, I wake up knowing he is anxious. He is across the world in another woman's arms, and the years have spread us like dandelion seeds, sanding down the edges of our jigsaw parts that used to only fit each other. He drinks from the pitcher on the nightstand, checks the digital clock, it is 5 a.m. He tosses in sheets and tries to settle. I wait for him to sleep before tucking myself into elbows and knees, reaching for things I have long since given away. On a similar love note, we'll do a more cheerful love poem. I started writing love poems between inanimate objects. And most of them were really terrible, actually. Turns out there's just not that many things that a light bulb has to say to a pair of scissors. Who knew? But there was one that I liked and that I kept, and it's a love poem from a toothbrush to a bicycle tire. And so the name of this poem is Toothbrush to the Bicycle Tire. They told me that I was meant for the cleaner life, that you would drag me through the mud. They said that you would tread all over me, that they could see right through you, that you were full of hot air, that I would always be chasing, always watching you disappear after sleeker models, that it would be a vicious cycle. But I know better. I know about your rough edges, and I have seen your perfect curves. I will fit into whatever spaces you let me. If loving you means getting dirty, bring on the grime. I will leave this porcelain home behind. I'm used to twice-a-day relationships, but with you, I'll take all the time. And I know we live in different worlds, and we're always really busy. But in my dreams, you spin around me so fast, I always wake up dizzy. So maybe one day, you'll grow tired of the road and roll on back to me. And when I blink my eyes into morning, your smile will be the only one I see. If I should ever have a daughter, instead of Mom, she's gonna call me Point B. Because that way she knows that no matter what happens, at least she can always find her way to me. And I'm gonna paint the solar systems on the backs of her hands. So she has to learn the entire universe before she can say, oh, I know that like the back of my hand. And she's gonna learn that this life will hit you hard in the face. Wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach, but getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air. There is hurt here that cannot be fixed by Band-Aids or poetry. So the first time she realizes that Wonder Woman isn't coming, I'll make sure she knows she doesn't have to wear the cape all by herself. Because no matter how wide you stretch your fingers, your hands will always be too small to catch all the pain you want to heal. Believe me, I've tried. And baby, I'll tell her, don't keep your nose up in the air like that. I know that trick. I've done it 1,000,000 times. You're just smelling for smoke, so you can follow the trail back to a burning house, so you can find the boy who lost everything in the fire to see if you can save him. Or else find the boy who lit the fire in the first place to see if you can change him. But I know she will anyway, so instead, I'll always keep an extra supply of chocolate and rain boots nearby because there is no heartbreak that chocolate can't fix. Okay, there's a few heartbreaks that chocolate can't fix, but that's what the rain boots are for, because rain will wash away everything if you let it. I want her to look at the world through the underside of a glass-bottom boat, to look through a microscope at the galaxies that exist on the pinpoint of a human mind, because that's the way my mom taught me, that there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this, my mama said, when you open your hands to catch and wind up with only blisters and bruises. When you step out of the phone booth and try to fly, and the very people you want to save are the ones standing on your cape. When your boots will fill with rain and you'll be up to your knees in disappointment, and those are the very days you have all the more reason to say thank you. Because there's nothing more beautiful than the way the ocean refuses to stop kissing the shoreline, no matter how many times it's swept away. You will put the wind in winsome. Lose some, you will put the star in starting over and over. And no matter how many landmines erupt in a minute, be sure your mind lands on the beauty of this funny place called life. And yes, on a scale from 1 to over-trusting, I am pretty damn naive. But I want her to know that this world is made out of sugar. It can crumble so easily, but don't be afraid to stick your tongue out and taste it. Baby, I'll tell her, remember your mama is a worrier and your papa is a warrior, and you are the girl with small hands and big eyes who never stops asking for more. Remember that good things come in threes, and so do bad things. And always apologize when you've done something wrong. But don't you ever apologize for the way your eyes refuse to stop shining. Your voice is small, but don't ever stop singing. And when they finally hand you heartache, when they slip war and hatred under your door and offer you handouts on street corners of cynicism and defeat, you tell them that they really ought to meet your mother. How am I doing on time right now? Anyone know? What? Oh. You thought I was joking? I put everything in my boots. Okay, super. I was gonna do like 2 more, and then we'll do Q&A. I think that is a good metric, right? Okay, great. It would be really funny if someone, no! You know, when people ask rhetorical questions on stage, I always want to be that guy. You know? How's it going today? Wonderfully! I always think that's silly. Okay. It was somewhere between the last day of school and the first. Somewhere between morning and nightfall, somewhere between New York City and the very tip of Long Island, there was a 9-year-old girl standing somewhere between the shoreline and the sand dunes, scanning the horizon like a hawk, like an Amazon warrior, like a great cavalry captain, like Charlemagne on the morning before he took his final enemy, jellyfish. There were jellyfish on my beach, in my ocean, and that silhouette of a soldier, that was me. I was the conqueror of the jellyfish. I was the vanquisher of the venomous, and I was armed with my plastic bucket and my legs, which were strong enough so I could plant them against the pull of the sinking tide, and I would wait for one of those red and purple translucent throbbing bubbles of death to drift unsuspecting into the claws of my plastic trap, and my legs were fast enough so I could dart back up onto the beach where I would toss my captives mercilessly into the sandpit I had dug, never stopping for breath, only for a juice box in the cool shade of our green and white umbrella. I was a man on a mission, which is to say, girl with a bucket. But in the bright glare of late August, those two look an awful lot alike. That bucket was sword and shield. That hole was prison and redemption. There was no repentance. I had no guilt. I was risking life and limb to protect everything I knew to be sacred. And you have to understand, I really believed it was so. I lost count after 22. The movements became fluid, almost memorized, and as day began to sink and pink and orange began to creep their way into the crystal of afternoon sky, seeping like ink into the ocean around my ankles, I grew weary. Mom and Dad called from the beach, time to turn in your bucket, time to stop killing the enemy, time to start thinking about what you want for dinner. And that's when it hit. The one that got away, quick like lightning, blinding like gunfire, piercing like the point of a spear. I was hit and I was down. I was down hard and fast. It was a hit and run. That jellyfish was gone before I even had time to register pain. And that mark lasted all summer long, like a railroad track down the back of my hand, a battle scar to mark the war that I had fought. And somewhere, in between then and now, irony slipped its way into my vocabulary. Laughter became an anecdote for guilt. Sacrifice grew to be a band-aid for shame, and unnecessary death became the nightmare that rode me piggyback. somewhere. And between then and now, I learned that every move you make echoes outwards from your body like ripples on the ocean from a skipping stone. It is what has taught me that karma is as tangible as the taste of seawater. Somebody, somewhere has a scorecard so that eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth really comes around to bite you in the ass. And what is it about immortality? With the right sword and shield, we think we can fend off anger, fear, and hatred. If our legs are fast enough, we think we can outrun age, loss, and death. That we will always truly live as master of all the jellyfish. Okay, now, I'm going to do one more poem, and then we're going to do a quick Q&A. Great. See how I didn't ask if that was okay? I just told you. That's what's happening. Okay. I usually don't tell people the backstory of this poem, but I think I will. When I was a junior in high school, I qualified to be on a National Poetry Slam team. And I was, I guess, 16 at the time. And the National Poetry Slam competition is usually a 21 and up event. So I couldn't go, despite the fact that I had made it onto a team. And I was heartbroken. And the next year, I was graduating from high school, and I had already planned my end of high school trip with my cousins. We were gonna go to Japan, rediscover the motherland. It was gonna be great. And I qualified for a team again, and I didn't think much about it because I was 17 and I was still too young. And then at the last second, they changed the rules so that it would be an 18 and up event. And I was gonna turn 18 right before Nationals, so I was gonna be able to go. And I was so thrilled and so excited. And as I'm sure you guys know, sometimes you are reaching for something, you get it, and you're like, yes! Oh no! Now I have to do this! And I was so nervous and scared and felt out of my league, and I didn't think there was any way I was going to be able to play with the big boys. And I went to Japan, and I visited Hiroshima. And I was thinking a lot about having to write a great poem for Nationals, and then that place really stuck with me. So this is the last poem that I'll do, and that's the backstory. When they bombed Hiroshima, the explosion formed a mini supernova. So every living animal, human, or plant that received direct contact with the rays from that sun was instantly turned to ash. And what was left of the city soon followed. The long-lasting damage of nuclear radiation caused an entire city and its population to turn into powder. When I was born, my mom says, I looked around the whole hospital room with a stare that said, this? I've done this before. She says, I have old eyes. I was only 5 years old when my grandpa Genji died, but I took my mom by the hand and told her, don't worry, he'll come back as a baby. And yet for someone who's apparently done this already, I still haven't figured anything out yet. My knees still buckle every time I get on a stage. My self-confidence can be measured out in teaspoons, mixed into my poetry, and it still always tastes funny in my mouth. But in Hiroshima, some people were wiped clean away, leaving only a wristwatch, a diary page, the mud flap to a bicycle. So no matter that I have inhibitions to fill all my pockets, I keep trying, hoping that one day I'll write a poem I can be proud to let sit in a museum exhibit as the only proof I existed. My parents named me Sarah, which is a biblical name. In the original story, God told Sarah that she could do something impossible, and she laughed. Because the first Sarah, she didn't know what to do with impossible, and me, well, neither do I, but I see the impossible every day. Impossible is trying to connect in this world, trying to hold on to others while things are blowing up around you, knowing that while you're speaking, they aren't just waiting for their turn to talk. They hear you. They feel exactly what you feel at the same time that you feel it. It's what I strive for every time I open my mouth, that impossible connection. There's this piece of wall in Hiroshima that was completely burnt black by the radiation. But on the front step, a person who was sitting there blocked the rays from hitting the stone. The only thing left now is a permanent shadow of positive light. After the A-bomb, specialists said it would take 75 years for the radiation-damaged soil of Hiroshima City to ever grow anything again. But that spring, there were new buds popping up from the earth. When I meet you, in that moment, I'm no longer a part of your future. I start quickly becoming part of your past. But in that instant, I get to share your present, and you get to share mine, and that is the greatest present of all. So if you tell me I can do the impossible, I'll probably laugh at you. I don't know if I can change the world yet, because I don't know enough about it. And I don't know enough about reincarnation either, but if you make me laugh hard enough, sometimes I forget what century I'm in. This isn't my first time here. This isn't my last time here. These aren't the last words I'll share, but just in case, I am trying my hardest to get it right this time around. Thank you. You guys are just clapping to get out of having to ask questions. Keep clapping, just keep clapping. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Yes?
Hi, thank you so much for coming. We just finished a poetry unit in my English class, and I hate to share my poetry with anyone. So I was wondering how you get the courage to share your poetry with hundreds of strangers.
Ooh, how do you get the courage to share your poetry with hundreds of strangers? Well, the first time I ever shared a poem, I was 14 years old. And after I was finished performing, a girl in the audience, I was so terrified. I puked beforehand because I was so nervous, literally. And I was shaking the entire time. Every time I went like this, it was really bad. And I came off stage and there was a girl in the audience who I didn't know, who was probably about 3 years older than I was, and like 12 feet taller than I was. And she looked like she was gonna eat me. And she came over to me and she said, "Hey, I really felt that." And knowing that a stranger can find some kind of truth in my figuring out of this world is really helpful to me. I think that's what we're all trying to do all the time, is you figure something out and you want to share it with your best friend. I'm doing the same thing. The only way I know how to figure things out is through poetry. Any other question? Yes, ma'am.
I know that in one of your poems you said that your dad always said to follow the light. And how have you been following the light in your life?
Oh, you're getting all deep on me up there. The question is, in one of my poems, I mentioned my dad is a photographer, and he says, "Follow the light." The question is, how do I follow the light in my life? Someone recently, my mother referred to me as a relentless optimist recently, which really surprised me because in my head I'm like this cynical, jaded New Yorker. But I think what it is, at least in poetry, I was taught that poetry is a celebration, and is always a celebration. Whether you're having a sad poem, an angry poem, what you're doing is you're taking the time to celebrate that moment, celebrate that feeling, celebrate that language. And if it's a celebration, then that has a certain level of joy in it. And so in terms of following the light in that respect, I'm following that celebration. Wow, y'all are just not going easy this morning. I like it. Any other questions? They don't have to be deep questions. She set the bar really high. You'd be like, "Where do you get those shoes?" Yeah. Were you actually going to ask that question? No. Okay.
Thank you for coming. My question is, once you write your poetry, since I guess there are 2 stories and everything, do you edit, go back and edit them?
Oh, please, Lord, yes. If you're someone who can just write and spin gold the first time you sit down, I will kill you. That is amazing. No, I have to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite constantly. What's cool about spoken word poetry is that the performing is an act of rewriting. So there are times when I write a poem and I think like this is the end of the poem, and I'm performing the poem and I get to this line and the audience breaks into applause. I'm like, "Oh, just kidding, that's the end of the poem." Right? And that's great. That's a wonderful thing to have a live audience to give you that feedback so you understand. It takes it outside of you, so you have more help in editing yourself. Good question. Yes?
What is your favorite poem that you've written?
What is my favorite poem that I have written?
Yeah.
Oh, it changes all the time because when you write a new one, you think it's the best poem that's ever been written, and then about a week later, you're like, this is the worst poem that's ever been written. I really like something that I didn't know I was doing at the time, but now I work really hard to continue doing, is I've always written from where I'm at. So when I was 14, I wasn't trying to write about being, 25 or I wasn't trying to write with wisdom that I didn't have. So a poem that I wrote when I was 14 sounds like I'm 14 in the poem. And a poem that I wrote when I was 20 sounds like I'm 20 in the poem. And I like that because then when I revisit the poem now, my voice is different and the way I think about it is different. And it's funny to find new places in that poem. The jellyfish poem I wrote when I was 15 or 16 years old. And when I wrote it, it was a very different poem. The words are exactly the same. But now when I perform it, I have found so much more meaning in it that I didn't have the first time around, and that's really fun to learn about yourself. It's like being a self-archaeologist. Any other, am I done on time? One more question.
Up here.
Up here, yes.
When you are writing a poem and you are searching for a word and you know what that word is but you just can't find it, do you look to a dictionary or a thesaurus?
I'm sorry, what is a dictionary? Do you mean like dictionary.com? Is that what you're referring to? I'm just teasing. You're asking me to pick sides on a very important question. It depends because sometimes you're so lost you don't even have that first word to go to the thesaurus for, right? Thesaurus is wonderful if you've got breadcrumbs. If you've got zilch, you gotta go somewhere else. But no, I actually think, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I ever go to a dictionary blind. It's really hard, like it's everything. Where are you gonna find where you wanna go? A thesaurus at least pushes you in the right general area, and then sometimes a thesaurus will give me words that I don't know, and then I will go back to the dictionary to figure out what those are. But yeah, probably a thesaurus. All right, thank you guys.